Thank you so much.
I think we got everyone. Questions?
What are we looking at? Do we know?
Well, hold on. I said it in the. We are currently expecting as much as 18 to 24 inches.
Last one was over a foot, but as the streets are mentioned, this is going to be different, right?
This will be big.
It was over a foot. It's a lot more challenging than this one.
Well, I think there are a couple factors here, and I'll invite up Chief Franklin Hodge as well. I'm very relieved that this is happening on a Saturday. It means that our school kids and teachers and many of the workers around the city who are able to be at home on weekends will hopefully be home and be able to stay inside. But we do know that this is going to not only have very high levels of snow overall, high accumulation in total, but it will come down very quickly too. And so over the period that we're expecting to see the most intense snowfall, it will be coming down fast and furious. And so especially in that Saturday morning window, 9 to 11 or noon or so, if people can really try to stay inside and check on their neighbors, that's very important.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I think one of the big challenges with this storm is it is a complicated weather pattern, and we have access to multiple forecasting services. We follow the National Weather Service and others. We've been reading the sort of detailed forecaster guidance over the past week, and what's been very clear is that there is still, even as of this morning, a fair amount of uncertainty about exactly where the intense bands of snow will set up in terms of the east-west trajectory of the storm. And the difference of 10 or 20 miles east to west may be the difference between getting a foot of snow or getting 2 feet of snow. So we're keeping a close eye on this. We're planning to treat this as a major snow event. We're planning for the worst case scenario on this. But I think the fact that the high end potential of this storm is so much larger than what we saw earlier this month is part of why there's this higher level of concern. As the mayor mentioned, the other big factor here is the winds. We're expecting wind gusts in excess of 50 miles an hour, and in some cases sustained winds up to 30 miles an hour. That's going to create intense whiteout conditions. This is a very light, fluffy snow that's also going to result in snow drifts and accumulations in certain places that may exceed the actual snowfall total. So all told, this is a blizzard. This is not just a big snowstorm, and that comes along with it some additional concerns, and that's part of why you're hearing, I think, a different tone today in terms of the risk and the response that we as the city are mounting.
And I'll just add, as our Chief of Environment and Energy and Open Space has mentioned, the potential for the high winds to line up with high tide means that there's risk of flooding as well.
Last time we had a storm like this, it was spectacular, bad way. Can you talk a little bit more about the flooding and the water and concerns about that, and see what the along those lines?
Yeah, I've been in touch with Massport this morning and want to thank Lisa Wieland, who says that over there they don't anticipate significant issues and they are ramping up just alongside the city of Boston. But if you think about our coastal neighborhoods, we're going to be watching very carefully, and I know EMS and others will be on hand to respond quickly.
Expiration date or expiration time on the snow emergency?
Yeah, sure. I'll answer that, and I'll also just add a little bit about the flooding potential. So the concern with this storm is that you have two things happening at once. You have a major storm with high winds alongside a king tide. And so when those two things sync up exactly, that can create the potential for substantial flooding, especially in coastal areas. We've been monitoring the timing of those two things, and at this point, the trend has been in a positive direction. So we think that the peak the peak water levels that we're likely to see are below our thresholds for some of our more intense flooding preparedness activations, deployable barriers, that sort of thing. But this is something that we're keeping an eye on. As the mayor said, our Chief of Environment, Reverend White Hammond, has been monitoring this as well and providing updates to the team. So we'll see how things play out in the next 24 hours, but we think that we're hopeful that we'll avoid the worst potential flooding scenarios.
End time for the emergency.
No, not at this point, but people who do live in low-lying areas or in areas that are flood-prone should pay attention to the news. They should pay attention to the forecast. It's never a good idea if you are on the road and there's water on that road, do not drive through it. You do not know how deep it is, so people should take all reasonable precautions. But at this time, there's no specific warnings beyond that. The question as to when the snow emergency is expected to end, it's really going to depend on conditions on the ground. The snow emergency exists so that we can clear our major arteries and keep them free for travel. And depending upon how much snow we get, how quickly it comes, how much we're able to maintain roadway throughout the storm, that's going to dictate when the snow emergency gets lifted. People should sign up for Alert Boston, boston.gov/alertboston. That will offer notifications when the emergency is lifted and give people time to get their cars. If they're parked in one of the discounted garages, they will have 2 hours after the end of the emergency to get their cars out.
Okay.
I know this isn't really the city's purview, but are you worried about the MBTA's ability to handle this?
We are always worried about the ability for our residents to get around. And again, because this is a Saturday, the hope is that there will be less need. Of course, we know our very, very hardworking essential workers will still be commuting to work to make sure that everyone is safe. But the hope is that people should give themselves plenty of time if they need to go out. It's always safer to be on public transportation than to be out on the roads by yourself, especially in such conditions. But if at all possible, please stay home, check on your neighbors, and try to stay safe and warm inside. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so where are you going to be tomorrow?